My wife saw my car sinking into the river. She heard me banging on the glass, begging for help, and still ran past me to save her ex-boyfriend first. Nolan Cross was sitting safely in his half-submerged SUV, calling Grace's name like he knew she would always come running. She looked at me through the rain. Then she looked at him. For a moment, everything stopped. Then she raised the rescue hammer and made her choice. The glass of Nolan's driver's side window shattered before mine did. That sound was louder than the storm, louder than the water rushing around me. I was trapped inside my sedan. My seat belt was stuck. My left shoulder was pinned by the crushed frame. The Westbridge Causeway lights flickered above the dark river as rain slammed against the roof. Cold water poured in through the vents, rising from my waist to my chest. Outside my window, I saw Grace's orange rescue jacket for a second. I wanted to believe training would overcome history. She was a river rescue commander. She had spent years teaching rookies how to prioritize the person in the most danger. The person trapped in the lower vehicle. The person with less time and less air. She had taught those lessons using equipment my company created and funding I provided. Then Nolan shouted, "Grace, I can't move." "He can." I saw his arm. He lifted it and waved at her. Grace immediately turned toward him. I slammed my elbow against the window until my skin tore. She looked back at me. For a second, our eyes met. She mouthed something, but I couldn't hear her through the rain and the glass. Then she ran. Not walked. Ran. The rescue hammer came down on Nolan's window. He reached through the broken glass and grabbed her arm like a man reunited with someone he had been waiting for. His face turned toward me through the storm. Even from a distance, I saw his smile. He mouthed two words. "Still mine." The water reached my chin. I stopped wasting my energy trying to break the window. My right hand searched under the dashboard and found the emergency button. It was part of a prototype I designed. A waterproof crash system that could upload cabin audio, exterior cameras, vehicle data, and GPS information to secure servers if the vehicle went underwater. Grace once called it unnecessary. I pressed it. A red light blinked beneath the broken dashboard. Upload active. Only then did I fight against the seatbelt again. Outside, Grace connected Nolan to the rescue line. Firefighters pulled him toward the shore. He stumbled once dramatically, even though the water barely reached his chest. Grace held his face in both hands. Her helmet light reflected across his cheek. He leaned into her touch. Then my cabin went dark. I don't remember the second rescue team breaking my rear window. I remember hands pulling me through freezing water. I remember coughing up river water on the concrete. I remember Grace shouting my name after the worst part was already over. When I opened my eyes again, I was staring at hospital lights. My throat burned. My left arm was wrapped. My ribs felt crushed. A monitor beeped beside my bed. Grace stood near the foot of the bed. Her hair was still wet. Her rescue jacket hung open over a gray shirt. Through the curtain beside me, I saw Nolan lying in the next bed. He looked much better than I did, and he looked satisfied. Grace stepped closer. "Ethan, thank God you're awake." I looked toward the bedside tray. My phone was sitting there inside a plastic evidence bag. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. The prototype had done its job. Grace reached for my hand, pulled away. For the first time since the river, her fingers stopped before touching me. Her expression changed. "Ethan?" Before she could continue, Nolan laughed quietly from the next bed. "Come on, man. She saved both of us." I didn't answer. Grace lowered her voice. "You were both in danger. I made a decision." I looked at her. Her eyes had the same expression she used when rookies questioned her orders. Calm, confident, like she believed an explanation would make everything disappear. "You didn't make a decision," I said. "You made a choice." Her jaw tightened. "I made a rescue call." Nolan pushed himself up slightly. I was trapped. I looked at him. His blanket slipped. His wrist moved easily. His legs were dry below the knees. "You waved at her," I said. His smile disappeared. Grace turned toward me. "Ethan, you almost died. Don't turn this into jealousy." And that was when I understood. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't apologizing. She was trying to control the story. She wanted to put my near death into a neat little box. A husband who misunderstood. A rescue that was complicated. A mistake that could be forgiven. But I knew the truth. She saw me sinking. She saw him calling. And she chose him. She wanted to close the lid on what happened and stand in front of the cameras as the brave woman who saved everyone. I reached for my phone. Grace noticed immediately. "You need to rest," she said. I ignored her and unlocked the screen with my thumb. The emergency app was open. For uploads were complete. Cabin audio. Front dash camera. Rear dash camera. Exterior telemetry and server logs. Grace's eyes followed the screen. "What is that?" she asked. I looked at her. "The part of the river you don't get to rewrite." Nolan's expression changed first. Not fear. Not yet. Just calculation. Grace stepped closer. "Ethan, give me the phone." I didn't. Instead, I tapped 3 contacts. Mara Pierce. My attorney. Tom Alvarez. Investigative producer at WCN 7. River Rescue Division Review Board. The files were already attached from the secure server. I added one message. Full footage from Westbridge Rescue. Preserve all metadata. Do not accept edited copies from Grace Merritt Vale or Nolan Cross. Grace's hand tightened around the bed rail. "Ethan." I pressed send. 3 quiet notification sounds left my phone. Nolan sat up fully. Grace stared at me like the hospital floor had shifted beneath her. "You sent it to someone?" she asked. 3 someones. Her voice became sharper. "Without talking to me?" I placed the phone face down on my chest. "You watched me sink without talking to me." The curtain moved. A nurse stepped inside, looked between us, and immediately realized she had walked into something bigger than a normal hospital argument. She quietly looked away. Grace straightened herself. "I am your wife." I looked directly at her. "Then you should have reached my window before his." Her face flushed. Nolan swung his legs over the side of his bed. "This is insane, Grace. Don't let him punish you for doing your job." My eyes moved to Nolan's feet touching the floor. "Careful," I said. "Men who are trapped usually don't stand that quickly." His fingers tightened around the blanket. Grace turned toward me. "Enough." I said nothing. My phone buzzed. A message from Mara. "Do not speak to either of them. I am coming." A second message appeared from Tom. "We received the files. Is this officially on record?" I typed with one hand. "Yes." Then I added, "Use my name." Grace watched every movement. "Ethan, what did you just do?" The monitor beside me kept beeping. I looked past her toward Nolan. His smile was gone. "I made sure the next window you break," I said, "is not the truth." My phone buzzed again. Tom's message. "Can we verify by 5? If yes, this leads at 6. For the first time that night, Grace stepped backward. She looked at Nolan. Not me. And Nolan looked away. 30 minutes later, Grace returned. This time she brought a hospital administrator, 2 rescue officers, and the face she wore for public disasters. Not her wife face, her press conference face. Her hair was tied back. Her jacket was zipped. Her wedding ring caught the light as she folded her hands. "Ethan," she said calmly, "we need to clarify what happened before this becomes damaging." I was sitting upright now. The nurses had removed my wet clothes. My ribs were wrapped. My left arm was throbbing under fresh bandages. Mara still had not arrived, so I kept my answer simple. "No." The administrator blinked. Grace's captain, a broad man named Heron Pike, cleared his throat. "Mr. Vale, nobody is here to pressure you." I looked at the clipboard in his hand. "Then you won't mind leaving the statement form outside." His fingers shifted slightly. Nolan appeared behind them wearing a borrowed hoodie, moving like someone who wanted everyone to see how brave he was. Grace noticed him and immediately stepped in front of him. Half a step, protecting him. Again, I noticed. Nolan looked down at my injured arm. "Man, this has gone too far. Grace saved you." I didn't respond. Grace looked frustrated by my silence. Ethan. Her voice hardened. Nolan could have gone into shock. He was standing in the hallway 10 minutes ago because he is trained to hide pain. I looked at Nolan. He was trained to fake it better than that. Nolan's expression darkened. Captain Pike raised a hand. Let's keep this civil. Grace took the clipboard from him and placed it on my tray. The first page was titled, Preliminary Victim Statement. I read the opening paragraph. Due to low visibility and simultaneous hazard conditions, Commander Merrittvale proceeded according to triage protocol and extracted the victim in the most accessible vehicle first. I looked at Grace. You already wrote my memory for me. Her mouth tightened. It's standard language. No. I stared at the paper. It's protective language. A silence filled the room. It protects the department from questions. I looked at her. It protects you. The administrator shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Vale, this is only a preliminary statement. I picked up the pen, clicked it once, and drew a straight line through the entire paragraph. Grace's hand moved slightly. Ethan? I ignored her and wrote underneath it. I was conscious. I was visible. My vehicle was lower in the water. Commander Grace Merrittvale made eye contact with me and chose to reach Nolan Cross first. Then I signed my name. The room felt different after that. Nolan laughed quietly. You're really doing this because your wife touched my face? Grace turned toward him. Nolan, stop. But she didn't tell him he was wrong. That told me everything. I placed the pen down. Captain Pike looked at the statement like it was something dangerous sitting in front of him. Grace leaned closer, close enough that only I could hear her. You're angry. I understand that. But if you damage my command because of a personal reaction, you will regret it. I looked at her wedding ring. For years, I had watched that ring open doors for her. Donors trusted her because she was married to the man funding much of her equipment. City officials gave her meetings because my company supported her rescue programs. Families saw our wedding photos, our charity events, and believed in the fearless commander they saw on camera. With a quiet husband standing beside her, she thought that support would last forever. She thought I was just another part of her uniform. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. Grace noticed immediately. What are you doing? I didn't answer. I removed her access from my private emergency medical authorization. Then her health insurance liaison privileges. Then my company's family travel policy. Then the joint donor portal I built for her foundation. One by one, doors closed. Access revoked. Authority removed. Shared accounts suspended. Foundation emergency access disabled pending audit. Grace watched the notifications appear on her phone. Her eyes widened when the third one came through. Ethan, why did I just lose access to the donor dashboard? Because the dashboard is mine. Captain Pike looked up. Nolan's expression changed. At first, curiosity, then concern. Grace lowered her voice. This is not the time. I looked at her. It became the time when you brought paperwork to my hospital bed. She tightened her grip on the clipboard. That portal supports water safety programs. I looked at Nolan. It also supports his consulting invoices. Nolan stepped forward. Careful. I turned toward him. His borrowed hoodie had my Rescue Foundation logo printed on it. Second reach. My foundation. My designs. My systems. My money. You're wearing something paid for by me, I said. So maybe be careful yourself. His face darkened. Grace immediately stepped between us. Nolan consults because he helped build community trust. I looked at her. He built invoices. Her expression hardened. You don't understand field work. I understand numbers. Nolan gave a short laugh. Barrett is a spreadsheet. The husband thinks he's a rescuer. I never looked away from Grace. You have 2 hours to remove him from every account connected to me. Her face became cold. Or what? My phone buzzed. A message from Mara. I'm downstairs. Say nothing else. Also, I found the post-nup clause. Foundation misuse triggers immediate audit rights. I turned the phone so Grace could read it. Her hand stopped halfway toward the bed rail. The administrator noticed enough to step back. Captain Pike rubbed his jaw. Nolan tried to recover. Grace, this is financial abuse. I tapped the logo on his hoodie with 2 fingers. The fabric moved. Then remove the evidence. His expression darkened. Grace stepped in front of him again. You will not humiliate him. That sentence hit harder than the crash. Not, you will not humiliate me. Him. The nurse entered with Nolan's discharge papers. He was being released that night, with instructions to return if anything changed. Nolan took the papers and smiled at Grace. Can you drive me? My SUV is underwater. Grace hesitated for only a second. Then she said, of course. And just like that, my wife was leaving the hospital with the man she had rescued before me. At the doorway, she looked back. We'll talk when you calm down. I picked up the revised statement and handed it to Captain Pike. No, I said. You'll talk when my attorney calls. Before Grace could respond, her phone rang. Then again. 3 calls in a row. Her foundation treasurer. A major donor. The city liaison. The confidence on Grace's face started to crack. Nolan looked over her shoulder. What is it? She didn't answer. Her screen lit up with a message from the donor portal. Emergency funding access suspended. Pending account ownership verification. I leaned back against the pillow. The river had not finished taking things from Grace. It had only started with me. Then Mara Pierce arrived. Wet hair, black heels, and the calm expression of someone people hire when their entire life is about to fall apart. Mara did not ask if I was okay. She looked at the bandages around my body, the oxygen monitor beside me, and the bruising around my throat. Then she simply said, "We are preserving everything." That was why she was my lawyer. Feelings could wait. Evidence could not. She placed a tablet on the tray and opened a secure folder. The dash system had uploaded everything. For camera angles, cabin audio, GPS records, accelerometer data, door pressure readings, water intrusion timing. Mara pointed at the screen. Your vehicle became critical at 8 hours 42 minutes and 16 seconds. Nolan's cabin remained above the waterline until 8 hours 49 minutes and 3 seconds. Grace reached him first at 8 hours 43 minutes and 11 seconds. I closed my eyes for a second. Less than a minute after my car became critical. Mara continued. The rear camera captured her looking directly at your window. The audio recorded you hitting the glass. The exterior camera captured Nolan raising his hand before she broke his window. Good. She paused. Most people would have asked why that was good. Mara understood. Good meant usable. Good meant no one could bury it. Good meant Grace could cry later, but she could not rewrite the river. She slid a document toward me. Medical authorization removal is complete. The separation notice can be filed today. The second reach audit request can go out by noon. The complaint to the Rescue Division Review Board is already drafted for the news station. She looked at me. I recommend a limited consent release. They can broadcast the footage, but not your private medical information. Do it. Mara studied my face. Grace will claim this is emotional retaliation. She can claim the moon is wet. She'll say you're punishing her for saving another victim. She can say that on camera. Mara's pen stopped. You want her to? I looked at the screen showing the footage. I want everyone to hear the question before they see the answer. A small smile appeared on Mara's face. You're angrier than you look. I'm not angry. She waited. I'm awake. Mara nodded once and handed me another document. Temporary separation and preservation of marital assets. I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Not because I doubted my decision. Because every signature meant something I had quietly built for years was now being dragged into the open. By noon, my hospital room had turned into a communication center. Grace called 7 times. I didn't answer. Her mother called twice. Her father sent one message. Don't destroy your wife over a rescue decision. I forwarded it to Mara. Nolan posted first. A picture of himself sitting on his couch with a blanket around his shoulders. Grace's hand was visible in the corner of the frame, holding a mug. The caption said, "Grateful to be alive. Some people run toward danger. Others run toward blame." The comments filled quickly. "Hero. Stay strong. Ignore jealous people." Grace didn't like the post publicly. She also didn't ask him to remove it. I opened our family group chat. My parents, her brother, 2 cousins, people who had been close enough to stand near us on our wedding day. Her mother had already written, "Everyone, please give Grace some grace tonight. She saved 2 lives." I typed 1 sentence. "The full evidence is preserved with counsel." Then I sent it. Nothing else. Let them sit with that. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Captain Pike called Mara. She put him on speaker. "Mr. Vale," he said, his voice rougher than before. "The department needs a copy of the original footage. You have received the preservation notice." Mara answered calmly, "You can request it through the formal review process. We are trying to get ahead of a public misunderstanding." I finally spoke. "You mean ahead of the news?" Silence. Then Pike said, "Grace is one of the best commanders we have." I interrupted. "She had one job at my window. That is not fair." I looked at the tablet. "Neither is drowning while your wife rescues someone else first." Pike took a breath. "Nolan Cross is also a victim. Nolan Cross was standing. He has a history with your department. He has a history with my wife." Mara touched the table once. "Enough." I stopped. Pike changed his approach. "Would you consider delaying the media release until the internal review is complete?" "No." I repeated it. "No." I looked at the statement they had brought me while I was still on oxygen. "Your internal review already put a false version of events in front of me while I was lying in a hospital bed." Another silence. "That was preliminary." A pause. "That was just a draft." He ended the call politely. People always ended calls politely when they realized the other side had recordings. By 4 I was discharged. I left with a sling, 2 prescriptions and instructions not to drive. My brother Luke picked me up. He looked at the bruises on my face. He didn't make the joke he probably had ready. He just opened the passenger door. "You going home?" he asked. "My house." "Yes." I looked out the window. The place that used to feel like home. "Yes." Luke understood the difference. "Grace coming home?" I shook my head. "No." She took Nolan home. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. I looked out the window at the wet city streets. News vans were already parked outside the hospital entrance. One reporter recognized me and stepped forward, but stopped when Mara raised 1 finger from the curb. "Not yet." During the drive home, my phone lit up. A message from Grace. "You sent lawyers after me before even asking why." I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I replied, "I saw why." Her answer came quickly. "You saw chaos. You saw a few seconds. You have no idea what I had to process." I sent her 1 still image from the rear camera. The picture showed everything. Grace's helmet light pointed directly at my window. My hand pressed against the glass. Nolan's SUV sitting higher in the water behind her. I wrote, "This is what you processed." She didn't reply. When we reached home, the front porch light was still on. Grace always left it on when she expected to return late. I stood there for a moment, staring at it. Then I opened my security app and changed the door code. Luke watched from the driver's seat. "You sure?" I stepped out carefully. My ribs pulled with every movement. "No." He looked surprised. I looked back at the house. I am certain inside. The house smelled like Grace. Cedar candles. Cold coffee she never finished. A framed picture from one of her rescue award ceremonies sat on the hallway table. In the photo, she held a plaque proudly. I stood 3 feet behind her, barely visible, cut off by the edge of the frame. I took the picture down. I didn't smash it. I didn't make a scene. I simply placed it face down inside a drawer. Then I walked into my office and opened the safe. Inside was everything. The postnuptial agreement, the house deed, the foundation charter, donor records, insurance policies, financial documents, and a sealed envelope Grace never cared about because she always believed boring paperwork was beneath people like her. I carried everything to the dining table. At 5:12 p.m. Tom Alvarez called. "We verified the metadata," he said. "We also confirmed the bridge traffic camera footage from the city feed. We can air tonight." "What angle?" "Public safety failure. Hero narrative under question. Commander's husband speaks through evidence." I paused. "I don't want emotional music." Tom was quiet for a moment. "Understood. No dramatic edits. No blurred footage where the decision becomes unclear. Show exactly what happened." "We will." "And Nolan's post?" "We have it." I looked at the papers spread across the table. "Use it." Tom exhaled. "Mr. Vale, Grace Merritt is loved by this city. This will hurt her." I looked toward the window. She should have thought about that before she ran past my window. At 5:59, I stood in my living room. My ribs were taped. My sling pulled against my neck. Channel 7's opening music played. The anchor looked directly into the camera. "Tonight, exclusive footage raises serious questions about a celebrated river rescue and the commander at the center of it." My phone buzzed. Grace, then her mother, then Captain Pike, then an unknown number. I ignored all of them. The first frame appeared. My car was already sinking. Grace was looking directly at me, and the entire city was about to watch her turn away. Grace did not come home that night. She sent messages instead. "You made this ugly." Then, the station removed the context. Then, "Nolan is getting threats because of you." Not once did she write, "I'm sorry I left you in the water." The broadcast did what real evidence always does. It removed opinions. It removed excuses. It did not call Grace cruel. It did not call Nolan a liar. It did not call me betrayed. It showed facts. The time. The water level. Grace's helmet light moving toward my window. Nolan's hand rising before rescue. And then the moment that mattered. She broke his window first. By midnight, the city had chosen sides. By morning, people who once called Grace a hero were asking why a rescue commander ignored basic triage. By noon, her department announced an internal investigation. By 3 p.m., Nolan deleted his post. By 6 p.m., Grace's mother sent me a message. She wanted dinner. At my own house. That was exactly how she wrote it. "We should all sit down at your home and settle this privately before more damage is done." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied. 7. Luke told me not to go through with it. Mara told me to record everything. So I did both. At 6:45, I placed my phone on the bookshelf with the camera facing the dining room. My security system recorded audio from 3 different angles. The post-nup agreement sat in a folder beside my plate. The deed was underneath it. At 7:02, Grace arrived. She used her old key. The lock didn't turn. She tried again. Then she rang the bell. I walked to the door and opened it. Her parents stood behind her. Her brother Mason was there too, his hands buried inside his jacket pockets. And Nolan stood at the back of the group holding a bakery box. Like a dessert could somehow make betrayal easier to swallow. Grace looked at the keypad beside the door. "You changed the code." "Yes." Her father frowned. "That seems unnecessary." I looked at Nolan. So was bringing him. Nolan lifted the bakery box slightly. "I came to clear the air." I looked at him. "You polluted it." Grace stepped forward quickly. "Ethan, enough. We are not doing this on the porch." I looked at her. She was wearing the cream sweater I bought her after her promotion. The one she once told me made her look softer in front of donors. Tonight, she needed that softness. I stepped aside. "Come in." They entered. Nolan walked straight into the dining room and sat at the head of the table. My chair. Grace noticed. She said nothing. Her mother started arranging plates like old habits could rebuild a broken family. "Everyone just breathe," she said. "A marriage is bigger than one terrible night." I stayed standing. Grace sat beside Nolan. That choice entered the room like another person. Her father sat across from me. Ethan, we watched the footage. It looked bad. It was bad. He looked uncomfortable. But Grace only had seconds. I looked at him. She used them. Grace's fingers tightened around her glass. I saved you. No. I looked at her. The second rescue team saved me. Her eyes flashed. Because I called them. After Nolan was already in your arms. Nolan leaned back in my chair. You keep saying that like it means something. I looked at his hands resting comfortably on my table. It means you are sitting in the wrong seat. He smiled. Grace invited me. I looked around the room. This is not Grace's house. The room went silent. Grace looked up sharply. Excuse me? I opened the folder I brought and placed the deed on the table. Property purchased solely by Ethan Vale. No marital interest. Her father reached for his glasses. Her mother stopped arranging the plates. Nolan's eyes moved from the paper to Grace. Grace lowered her voice. You are really going to use the house against me? No. I looked at the document. I'm identifying the owner. I placed another paper beside it. We are married and separated as of yesterday. Mason looked at his sister. Separated. Grace glared at me. A piece of paper does not end a marriage. I nodded slowly. No. I looked directly at her. A rescue hammer through another man's window while mine filled with water helped. Nolan suddenly stood. I'm not listening to this. Good. I picked up the bakery box from the table. I walked to the front door. Then I placed it outside. I held the door open. Nolan stared at me. You want me to leave? I looked at him. I wanted you never to come. Grace stood. Ethan, if he leaves, I leave. I nodded once. Then choose faster than you did at the river. Her mother gasped. Grace's face tightened. But she didn't move. Nolan grabbed his jacket. Fine. Let him have his little power trip. He walked toward the door. At the entrance, he turned back. Grace. The way he said it wasn't a question. It was an expectation. Command. Grace took one step toward him. Her father quietly said her name. Grace. She stopped. For the first time, her family saw it. Not the accident. Not the rescue. The pattern. Nolan first. Everyone else later. I handed Nolan a printed document. He looked down. Notice of demand to preserve evidence and cease use of second reach branding. His eyebrows pulled together. What is this? You have 24 hours to return all Foundation equipment, clothing, access badges, donor records, and devices. Grace crossed the room. You cannot do that. I looked at her. I own the trademark through Vale Systems' charitable division. Her voice hardened. That foundation is my work. No. I looked at Nolan. It was your face. Then at myself. My money. Then back at him. My platform. His invoices. Nolan crushed the edge of the paper in his hand. Sue me. I looked at him. I am. He stopped. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Grace stepped closer. Ethan, you are taking this beyond repair. I looked at her. You said that like repair is still an option. For a second, her lips parted. The commander disappeared. And the woman I married looked back at me. For one moment, I almost recognized her. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down. A message from Nolan. Even though he was standing 6 feet away, I only saw the first line. Do not let him scare you. That was enough. I opened the family group chat. I sent 3 files. The deed, the separation notice, and a still image of Nolan waving from his SUV while my car filled with water. Grace's mother's phone chimed on the sideboard. Then her father's. Then Mason's. Mason opened the image. His expression changed. He looked at Nolan. You waved. Nolan immediately defended himself. It's a still frame. It doesn't prove anything. Mason turned the phone toward Grace. He waved. Grace looked at the image. Her hand stopped above her phone. Nobody said anything. But the silence was different. It wasn't shock. It was worse. It was recognition. Nolan opened the front door himself. I'm done being judged by people who weren't there. I looked at him. The cameras were. He left. Grace stayed in the hallway, frozen between the door and the dining table. Her mother slowly sat down. Her father removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Mason walked to the window and watched Nolan get into a rideshare. Grace's voice was quiet. "You're turning everyone against me." I looked at her. "No." I glanced around the room. "I'm turning the lights on." Her eyes filled slightly, but no tears fell. She still had too much pride. "Where am I supposed to go tonight?" I picked up her overnight bag from beside the coat closet. I had packed clothes, medication, important documents, and the framed photo from the hallway. I handed it to her. "You made that decision before dinner." Her fingers tightened around the strap. She looked past me into the house. Her house. That was what she always called it. Her safe place. Her proof that no matter how late she came home after saving everyone else, this place would always be waiting. The keypad behind her blinked red. Not anymore. Grace chose the station. It was probably the smartest move she had made all night. By morning, River Rescue released a statement. Commander Grace Merrittvale followed a dynamic rescue assessment under extreme weather conditions. Edited clips circulating online do not reflect the totality of the incident. I read that line twice while standing in my kitchen. One hand pressed against my ribs. Coffee going cold beside me. Edited clips. That was their defense. They were going to call the truth edited because the full truth was worse. Nolan gave an interview before lunch. He wore a neck brace that never existed at the hospital. He sat on his couch beneath a framed rescue certificate and spoke in a weak, damaged voice. "I remember water rushing in." He looked into the camera. "I remember being unable to feel my legs." Grace did what any trained commander would do. He paused at exactly the right moment. "It breaks my heart that her own husband has turned a rescue into a personal attack." Then came the final performance. A tear appeared in his eye, but it never fell. "Ethan has always resented our bond." I watched it once. Then I sent the clip to Mara. Her reply came quickly. "He just opened the defamation door." I replied, "Good." I met Mara at her office at 2. Not a giant corporate tower. Not some dramatic glass building. Just a legal office above an old bakery. Wood floors. Simple conference chairs that squeaked. The kind of place where people signed papers that changed lives. Mara placed 3 stacks of documents in front of me. "First." She tapped the first stack. "Defamation and false light." She tapped the second. "Foundation audit and trademark enforcement." Then the third. "Divorce filing and temporary asset restraint." I looked at the third stack. It was thinner than I expected. Mara noticed. Clean prenup. Cleaner postnup. No children. Premarital house. Separate businesses. Joint accounts were limited. She flipped through the pages. Grace signed without reading. A small memory came back. The night we signed it. She laughed and said, "If I ever cheat, you can take the house plants too." I smiled back then, because we were newly married. Because I believed people who joked about betrayal were the people least likely to commit it. Mara opened the postnup. "There is no morality penalty unless assets are misused or reputation damage affects the agreements. But your company, her foundation's use of your systems, and Nolan's compensation put us into recovery territory." I didn't hesitate. "Do it all." Mara leaned back. "Once this is filed, it becomes difficult to soften." I thought about Grace's hand on Nolan's face while water closed over my mouth. File. At 2:41, Grace received the first legal notice at the station. At 2:53, Nolan received the second at his apartment. At 3:07, the foundation treasurer called me. Her name was Diane Bell. She had sent me Christmas cookies for 5 years. She never once questioned why Nolan's invoices kept increasing. Today, her voice sounded shaken. "Ethan, I didn't know about the personal charges." "What personal charges?" There was a pause. "You haven't seen the preliminary export? Send it." 2 minutes later, the spreadsheet arrived. Hotel stays, restaurant bills, fuel reimbursements, consulting advances, a weekend lake resort labeled Flood response retreat. The dates matched nights. Nights Grace told me she was sleeping at the station. I didn't react. Reaction was for people who still hoped the facts would be kinder. I forwarded the file to Mara, then to Tom Alvarez. One message: do not air yet. Verify everything. At 3:16, Grace called. This time I answered. Not because I wanted to hear her, because I wanted to know what she would say when the truth finally started closing in. Because people reveal more when they think they can still control you. Ethan, she said, breathing heavily. What did you send Nolan? A demand letter. He's panicking. He should read it carefully. You can't sue him for talking about how he felt. I can sue him for lying about me. A long breath. He didn't say you caused it. He implied I twisted everything because I was jealous of him. You are jealous of him. No. I looked at the spreadsheet open on my laptop. I'm suing him. Silence. Then her voice softened. Why are you being like this? I stared at the document. Hotel Blue Heron Lodge. 2 nights. King Suite. Paid with the foundation card. Her breathing changed. Where were you on March 14th? What? March 14th. You told me you were at a night rescue certification. I was. Blue Heron Lodge offers certification now? The line went quiet. Not for a second. Long enough. I closed my eyes, then opened them. The last soft part of me stayed closed. Grace spoke carefully. That was not what you think. It was charged to the foundation. It was a planning retreat with Nolan. In a king suite? Ethan, do not use my name like a rope. Her breathing became uneven. I could picture her standing outside the station, one hand over her mouth, looking around to see if anyone was listening. Grace hated looking out of control in public. Good. Public was where she built the image. Public was where it would collapse. You're mixing things together, she whispered. No. I looked at the files again. You separated them. I'm putting them back in order. The accident is one thing, and your relationship with Nolan is another. It was friendship. Your friendship created hotel bills charged to my foundation. It wasn't your foundation. I almost laughed. The IRS documents say otherwise. Silence. Then her anger returned. The same way it always did when her pride needed saving. You want to humiliate me? I looked at the screen. No. My voice stayed calm. I wanted you to rescue me. The line stayed open. For once, she had no answer ready. I ended the call. At 5, Channel 7 teased a follow-up story. New evidence raises questions about rescue timeline and victim statements. At 6, Grace's department announced a press conference for the next morning. At 7, Nolan posted again. Some men would rather destroy a woman's career than admit she didn't choose them first. I took a screenshot. At 8, Mara sent me the filed divorce petition. At 9, my doorbell rang. Grace stood outside. She was wearing her station uniform. Rain covered her shoulders. The same rain smell from the river. I opened the door, but I kept the chain locked. Her eyes dropped to it. That's new. I looked at her. So is drowning alone. She flinched. Good words should touch the wound they came from. She lifted a folder. I brought the department's full incident narrative. I want you to read it before tomorrow. Is it true? It is complete. That wasn't my question. Her jaw tightened. Behind her, at the curb, Nolan sat inside a car. Of course he did. I looked back at her. You brought him to my house again. He drove me. Your department vehicle is restricted? Yes. Pending review? She didn't answer. The first real consequence. Small, but real. She noticed that I noticed. Her pride forced her chin higher. It's temporary. I looked at her. Most losses start that way. She pushed the folder toward the gap in the door. I didn't take it. Instead, I slid a paper through the chain. She looked down. Her expression changed. Divorce petition. Her fingers froze. The porch light fell across the first page. Ethan Vale. Petitioner. Grace Merritt Vale. Respondent. Her mouth opened. But before she could speak, Nolan stepped out of the car. What's taking so long? Grace didn't turn. Her hand shook once. Just once. Ethan, she said quietly, don't do this before the press conference. I closed the door until only her face remained visible through the gap. You should have thought about timing at 8:43. Then I closed it. I heard Nolan's footsteps reach the porch. I heard his voice. What did he say? Grace didn't answer. Paper moved. Then Nolan spoke again. Lower. For the first time, he sounded afraid. The next morning, Grace walked into the department press room like someone trying to outrun a camera that had already caught her. She wore her dress uniform, navy jacket, polished badge, hair pulled tight, no wedding ring. That last detail was noticed online before the reporters even asked. I watched from Mara's office. A cup of coffee sat untouched in front of me. Tom Alvarez called it early. We have the city bridge feed, he said. And the dispatch audio. Does it match mine? A pause. It makes yours worse for her. At 10 a.m. Grace stood behind the podium. Captain Pike opened first with careful words. Extreme conditions. Split-second decisions. Incomplete online narratives. The language was polished. The message was clear. They were preparing the city for an explanation. But the truth was already there. Then Grace stepped forward. Her hands rested on both sides of the podium. For 10 years, she began, I have dedicated my life to rescue work. I understand the public concern. I also understand the pain my husband experienced that night. But I reject any suggestion that I knowingly endangered him or placed personal history above professional duty. Personal history, not not Nolan. She was still trying to soften the edges. A reporter raised a hand. Commander, did you see your husband conscious inside his vehicle before extracting Mr. Cross? Grace looked directly into the cameras. I saw multiple hazards. I acted according to accessibility. Mara looked at me. I nodded. Send it. She immediately texted Tom. 30 seconds later, Channel 7 interrupted the live press conference. The anchor's voice came through. We are pausing this coverage to show newly verified footage from the Westbridge incident, including city bridge cameras and dispatch audio, which appears to contradict parts of Commander Merrittvale's statement. The screen changed. This time it wasn't my dash camera. It was the city bridge camera. Cold, distant, unemotional. The truth from above. My sedan had broken through the guardrail nose first and rolled into the river at a lower angle. Nolan's SUV was closer to the embankment. Tilted, damaged, but stable. His window was still above the waterline. A timestamp appeared in the corner. 8 hours, 42 minutes, and 16 seconds. Then the dispatch audio played. Vehicle 1 taking water fast. Driver visible. Driver striking window. Then Grace's voice. I see him. The press room feed showed Grace still standing behind the podium. Her lips parted slightly. The footage continued. Nolan's voice came through the rain. Grace, over here. Then another responder shouted, Commander, sedan is lower. Grace moved across the screen, toward Nolan. The audio caught Nolan again. I'm stuck, baby. Hurry, baby. The word hit the press room like shattered glass. Reporters started whispering. Captain Pike stepped closer to Grace. But he didn't touch her. The footage zoomed in. Nolan's arm lifted inside the SUV. He wiped his mouth. Then he waved. Not a desperate movement. Not a trapped person's reflex. A wave. The split screen changed. On one side was Nolan's interview from the day before. I couldn't feel my legs. On the other side was the bridge footage, showing him moving, pushing against the steering wheel, adjusting his body before Grace arrived. The anchor continued. Medical records provided with Mr. Vale's consent confirm he suffered water aspiration, rib injuries, and lacerations requiring overnight observation. Mr. Cross was released the same evening. Grace grabbed the edge of the podium. The camera caught it. Her fingers pressed so hard her knuckles turned white. Tom didn't stop. The dispatch audio continued. Responder. Commander. Sedan first. Grace. Cross first. Responder. Move. Veil is under faster. Grace. Cross first. There it was. No jealousy. No interpretation. No emotional argument. Just an order. My wife's order. Cross first. Mara lowered her eyes for a moment. Not out of pity. Out of respect for the impact happening in that room. A reporter stood. Commander, why did you order Cross first after acknowledging your husband was lower in the water? Grace opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Captain Pike reached for the microphone. We will take another question, the reporter continued. Did your previous romantic relationship with Mr. Cross influence that decision? Grace's eyes moved toward the side of the room. The camera followed. Nolan was there. Of course he was. He stood near the wall wearing a dark coat. The neck brace was gone. His face was tense. When the camera found him, he stepped backward. Too late. Another reporter spoke. Mr. Cross, were you unable to move your legs as you stated yesterday? Nolan turned away. That small movement did more damage than any denial. Grace finally found her voice. I made the decision I believed would save the most lives. Tom's producer must have been waiting for that exact line. The broadcast cut back to my cabin audio. My hand hitting the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. Then my voice. Clear. Grace. The room heard it. The city heard it. Grace heard herself not answering. Her expression changed. Not dramatically. Not like someone caught pretending. Something worse. Like a professional who finally understood exactly what the evidence proved. Her lips trembled. A tear slipped down before she could stop it. The camera stayed on her. I need a moment, she whispered. But live television doesn't give moments back once it takes them. She stepped away from the podium. Her heel caught the edge of the platform. Captain Pike reached for her arm. She pulled away, then covered her mouth with one hand. A reporter asked, softer now, but still loud enough for everyone to hear. Commander, did you hear your husband calling your name? Grace looked at the microphone. Her eyes filled with tears. I heard a lot of things, she said. Wrong answer. Every rescuer watching knew it. Every spouse watching knew it. At 11:12, the department ended the press conference. At 11:19, River Rescue announced that Grace had been placed on administrative leave pending review. At 11:31, Second Reach's largest sponsor suspended funding. At 11:44, Nolan's consulting page disappeared from the foundation website. At noon, Grace called. I didn't answer. At 12:03, her mother called. I didn't answer. At 12:07, Mason texted me. I saw the full audio. I'm sorry. I replied, thank you. At 12:21, Captain Pike called Mara. He wanted to know if I would consider a joint statement asking people to stop harassing rescue personnel. Mara looked at me. I said, yes. Then I added, no mention of Grace's judgment. No protection for Nolan. No fake unity. The statement went out under my name. Threats are unacceptable. Accountability is not harassment. Let the review proceed based on evidence. By 2, the comments under Nolan's posts had changed. By 3, people started finding old pictures of him and Grace. By 4, Blue Heron Lodge was trending. That part didn't come from me. Not directly. Tom had verified the foundation charges. He called at 4:18. Ethan, we have receipts from the Lake Lodge. Nolan's name. Grace's name. Foundation card. He paused. There is also an invoice labeled flood outreach dated the same weekend. Use only what legal clears. We will. I looked at Mara. She nodded. We are filing the audit demand now. At 5, Grace finally came to Mara's office. She came alone. No Nolan. Smart. Too late, but smart. Mara asked if I wanted to see her. I said yes. Not because she deserved it. Because I wanted to see if she finally understood the difference between regret and consequence. Grace entered the conference room. She was still wearing her uniform pants, but her jacket was gone. Her eyes were red. Her hair was loose. She looked younger than she had that morning, but older than she looked in our wedding photos. She stood across from me for a long moment. She said nothing. Then finally, "They played it like I abandoned you." I looked at her. They played it in order. Her hands closed into fists. "Ethan," I froze. "No." I looked at her. "You ordered." I panicked. "No." My voice stayed calm. "You prioritized." Her face tightened around that word. Then she whispered, "Nolan needed me." That sentence finally made me lean forward. "He needed you to break his window." I looked at her. "I needed you to save my life." She closed her eyes. "You were always strong," she said quietly. "You always handle things." I stared at her. "Nolan." She stopped. "Finish that sentence carefully." She opened her eyes. But it was already too late. The truth had already walked into the room. Nolan was fragile. Nolan needed her. Nolan had history. Nolan got the first window. I stood. "We're done here." She reached across the table. "Ethan, please." Mara moved the divorce petition between us. Grace's hand stopped above the paper, the same way it had stopped above my hospital bed. This time, nobody confused hesitation with care. Mara spoke calmly. "All communication goes through counsel." Grace looked at Mara, then back at me. "You cannot mean that." I walked toward the door. Mara continued. "Also, Commander Merrittvale, you are formally notified that Second Reach Foundation accounts are subject to an independent audit." Grace looked up. "Do not delete records. Do not instruct Mr. Cross to delete records. Do not communicate with donors using Mr. Vale's name." Her face changed. "What records?" Mara slid the Blue Heron Lodge receipt across the table. Grace looked down. The little color left in her face disappeared. I opened the door. Grace whispered, "That is not what it looks like." I stopped. For once, I didn't argue. I just said, "I hope it is." Then I left her standing there with the receipt in her hand. Grace wanted two separate worlds. In one world, she was my wife. The woman who made one impossible rescue decision and felt misunderstood. In the other world, she was Nolan's protector. The person who understood his trauma, his pride, his failures, and apparently his hotel expenses. The problem with evidence is that it hates separate worlds. Connects everything. It opens every door. The next morning, I received Nolan's civil claim. He accused me of emotional distress, reputational damage, and intentional interference with his employment opportunities. He claimed I released misleading footage to destroy him because of years of marital jealousy. Mara read it once, then laughed. Not loudly, just enough. "He's trying to scare you into settling. Can we respond today?" She flipped the page. "We can respond with a counterclaim." "Do it." She continued reading. "He also claims you threatened him at your home." I looked at her. "He was recorded." "I know." She smiled slightly. "That's why I enjoyed that part." By noon, Nolan's attorney received 3 video clips. Nolan sitting in my chair. Nolan refusing to leave. Nolan saying, "Sue me." The civil claim did not disappear, but it stopped breathing. So Grace tried coming at me from another direction. After I blocked her personal number, she texted from a new one. "I know you said counsel only. I will respect that after this. But please separate us from Nolan. Our marriage should not end because of his mistakes." I stared at the message. Our marriage did not end because of Nolan's mistakes. It ended because Grace kept calling her choices his influence. I forwarded the message to Mara. Then I blocked the new number. At 3, I went to the police station. Not for revenge. For paperwork. A detective named Ingram took my statement in a small interview room with beige walls and a vending machine humming outside. Mara sat beside me. I gave him everything. The crash footage. The bridge camera references. Nolan's public statements. His civil claim. The foundation expense records. The home security footage. Detective Ingram watched the important clips without changing his expression. Good detectives do that. They let evidence speak before their face does. When the footage reached Nolan waving from the SUV, he paused it. "He said he couldn't move?" "Yes. And your wife's department statement supported Choosing the more accessible victim first? Yes. He wrote something down. Then the footage reached the house. Nolan saying, "Sue me." Ingram's pen stopped. "People should say that less often." Mara nodded. "We agree." Ingram took copies, issued a report number, and said the crash file would be reviewed with traffic investigators. When I walked out, Grace was standing in the lobby. She had clearly been waiting. No uniform this time. Jeans, dark coat, hair down, less commander, more wife, or at least the version of a wife she thought might still work. She stood when she saw me. Mara stepped slightly forward. Grace looked at her. "I'm not here to argue." I kept walking. "Ethan, please." 10 minutes. Mara answered immediately. "My client is not available." Grace ignored her. "I told Nolan to drop the claim. That made me stop." I turned. Her eyes flickered. "He said his lawyer thinks he has a case." "No." I looked at her. "He thinks you will pressure me." She looked exhausted enough to be honest, but still proud enough to fight it. "He's scared." "He should be. He's losing work." "He lied on television." She swallowed. "So did I." A pause. "Apparently." I studied her. There it was. The deal. She would admit just enough to make me soften. Never enough to truly accept responsibility. "Apparently." Her throat moved. "I should have gone to you first." I waited. She looked down. "I knew your car was lower." There it was. Small, quiet, but real. Mara's eyes sharpened. Grace realized what she had just admitted. I didn't smile. I didn't attack. I didn't say I caught you. The lobby camera above the door had already captured everything. "Put that in writing." Her head lifted. Pain crossed her face. Then anger followed. "You brought me here for that?" "No." I looked at her. "You followed me here for that." She stepped back. A uniformed officer at the desk glanced over. Grace noticed. She lowered her voice. "You used to protect me." "Yes." I looked at her. "And now I protect myself." The sentence landed harder than any insult. Her eyes filled again. But tears had lost their power after live television. They no longer moved me. They only showed pressure. "I cannot lose my command." I looked at her. "Then you shouldn't have used it on Nolan first." She looked toward the exit. "He is all I have left in that department." "No." I shook my head. "He is why you have less left every day." She didn't answer. Outside, a city vehicle was waiting. Not a department SUV. Plain sedan. Administrative transport. Another small loss. Another locked door. I went home. 3 letters were waiting in the mailbox. One from River Rescue confirming my complaint had entered formal review. One from Second Reach's board acknowledging the audit request. One from Grace's attorney requesting mediation before further hostile action. I read that phrase twice. Hostile action. Apparently drowning quietly would have been considered cooperation. I placed the letters into separate folders. 6. Tom called. "We have a problem." "What kind?" "Nolan is claiming the foundation expenses were approved by you." I looked at the donor records spread across my desk. "He has my signature." Mara was on speaker. There was a brief silence. Then, "Send us whatever he provided." 5 minutes later, the email arrived. A scanned approval form. My name was at the bottom. Ethan Vale. The signature was close. Not good. Close. Someone who saw my signature once a year might believe it. A bank would not. A forensic examiner would not. I enlarged the image. The pressure was wrong. The way the letters moved was wrong. The E curved like Nolan's handwriting. The date format used slashes. I used periods. Grace had seen enough of my documents to know that. So if Nolan submitted this, either he forged it without her knowing, or she ignored it because the lie helped her. Either way, it worked in my favor. Mara's voice came through the speaker. "We have forgery." I looked at the scanned form. Nolan had tried to climb out of the river by stepping on my name. This time, there would be no rescue line. For years, people called me Grace's quiet husband. At award dinners, they placed me at the edge of photos. At fundraisers, they praised Grace for her vision and Nolan for his field experience. Then someone would look at me and say, "And Ethan, of course, for supporting. As if rescue drones bought themselves. As if waterproof dash systems appeared from Goodwill. As if the donor platform, telemetry software, training simulators, emergency upload servers, and half the foundation budget came from applause. I let them believe it because Grace once squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, 'You know what you mean to me.' Back then, that was enough. It wasn't anymore. The truth did not come out through one dramatic speech. Came out through closed doors. First, a city safety director emailed Grace's department asking why Veil Systems had suspended technical support for 3 pilot rescue units. Then, a donor asked why Second Reach's emergency portal now displayed, "Under independent audit, contributions temporarily restricted." Then, a local blogger discovered public records showing Veil Systems owned the intellectual property behind the Rescue Command dashboard Nolan claimed he helped create. Then Mason sent one message in the family group chat. "I just learned Ethan built the system Grace's team uses. Why did nobody know?" Grace did not answer. Her mother sent a question mark. Her father wrote, "Grace, still nothing?" By afternoon, Channel 7 was calling it, "The quiet husband behind the rescue technology." I hated the phrase, but it was accurate enough to hurt the right people. At 3, I attended the Second Reach board meeting remotely. Grace was there. So was Diane, the treasurer. Nolan was not invited, which meant he joined through Grace's speakerphone until Mara objected. "This audit concerns Mr. Cross," Mara said. "He does not participate unless formally requested." Grace responded, "Nolan has institutional knowledge." I looked at the screen. Nolan has invoices. The board chair, a retired judge named Helen Marks, adjusted her glasses. "Commander Merritt Vale, place your phone on the table and disconnect Mr. Cross." Grace hesitated. Helen's voice became sharper. "Now." Grace ended the call. Her expression showed the frustration of someone being told no in a room she once controlled. Diane presented the preliminary findings. Blue Heron Lodge, 3 hotel stays, 9 restaurant charges, personal laptop, consulting fees paid before contracts were approved. Mileage reimbursements on days Nolan's vehicle records showed him in another county. Then came the forged approval form. Helen stared at it. "Mr. Vale, is this your signature?" "No." Grace turned toward me. "Ethan, think carefully." The room went silent. Mara slowly turned her head toward Grace. Helen looked at her. "Commander, are you suggesting he may not remember signing?" Grace's expression tightened. "I'm saying there were many documents during that period." I opened the folder beside me. I held up 4 documents. My signature from that same month. Bank authorization, vendor contract, insurance renewal, donation transfer. Mara shared them on the screen. The signatures matched. Then she placed Nolan's form beside them. Wrong slant, wrong date format, wrong pressure, wrong ending stroke. Diane whispered, "Oh my God!" Grace stared at the screen. Her lips moved. No words came out. Helen looked at Diane. "Who submitted this form?" Diane checked her notes. "It came from Mr. Cross's foundation email." "And who approved his foundation email access?" Another silence. Diane swallowed. "Commander Merritt Vale." Grace closed her eyes. The board chair wrote something down. "Effective immediately, Nolan Cross is suspended from all foundation activity." She continued, "Commander Merritt Vale, your administrative authority over financial approvals is suspended pending full review." Grace's eyes opened. "Helen, that is unnecessary." "It is necessary." Grace sat straighter. "I built Second Reach." Helen's voice stayed calm. "And apparently forgot who paid for the bricks." The words landed hard. Grace looked like she had been slapped. I did not enjoy that moment. I just noticed it. There is a difference. The meeting ended with 3 decisions. Audit expansion. Referral to law enforcement if the forgery was confirmed. Temporary control of foundation funds transferred to an independent administrator. Grace stayed on the screen after everyone else left. Only Mara, Helen, and I remained. Grace looked at me. Did you know this would happen? Yes. Her expression changed. How long have you been preparing? Since the hospital. She laughed once. Not happily. A bitter, broken sound. One night. That is all it took for you to turn on me. No. I looked at her. One night is all it took for me to stop covering for you. Her eyes filled. You think I never loved you? I looked past her through the blurred office glass. People moved around the station. Nobody came in. Nobody interrupted. Administrative leave had made her visible, but untouchable. I think love became something you used to silence me. Her mouth opened. That is not fair. Neither was Cross first. She flinched. That phrase had become a key. Every time I said it, the same door opened. The river. The window. The choice. Helen ended the call before Grace could turn her pain into another argument. My phone rang immediately after. Unknown number. I let it go. A voicemail appeared. Nolan's voice came through. Ethan, listen. We need to talk man to man. Grace is falling apart because of what you're doing. You're hurting her to get to me. A pause. If you want money, tell me a number. If you want me gone, fine. His voice hardened. But if I go down, I'm not going alone. I saved the voicemail. Then I sent it to Mara. Her reply came quickly. Good. He's entering the blame phase. At 7 that evening, Grace came back to the house. This time she stood outside the gate. Her old remote no longer worked. She kept pressing the button. Nothing happened. The gate stayed closed. I watched from the upstairs office window. She looked smaller behind the iron bars. Not because she was weak, because access had always made her feel powerful. She called through the intercom. Ethan, I know you're home. I pressed the button. Counsel only, please. Nolan lied to me. Then talk to your lawyer. I didn't know about the signature. Then talk to the police. I did not sleep with him at Blue Heron. I paused. Not because I believed her, because I realized she still thought that was the center of everything. The hotel. The jealousy. The old story. I pressed the intercom again. You left me underwater. Her face changed for a second. Then she grabbed the gate with both hands. I made a terrible call. I know that now. No. I looked at her. You made your most honest one. Car turned onto the street. Grace saw it too. Nolan parked badly near the curb and got out quickly. What are you doing here? Grace demanded. He pointed toward my house. Fixing what he is doing to us. Grace turned toward him. I saw the word hit her differently. Not comforting. Not reassuring. Wrong. Nolan stepped closer to the gate camera. You think you won? His voice rose. You think people care about paperwork? He pointed toward the house. Grace will stand by me. She always does. Grace looked at him. Nolan, stop. He didn't. You were never enough for her, Ethan. His voice became cruel. You know that. Even when she married you, she came to me when things got hard. Grace's face went pale. The gate camera recorded every word. I saved the clip before Nolan finished speaking. He had just made the mistake arrogant people always make. He thought a locked gate meant privacy. Didn't. Nolan's downfall did not begin on television. It began in a municipal conference room. Bad coffee. Fluorescent lights. A printer that jammed twice before finally producing the evidence packet. Men like Nolan loved cameras when they could perform pain. They hated rooms where every claim needed proof. Detective Ingram sat on one side of the table. A traffic investigator sat beside him. Helen Marks represented Second Reach. Mara represented me. Grace arrived with her attorney. A thin man named Paul Sutter. He looked like he already regretted taking the case. Nolan arrived 10 minutes late. He wore a suit. No tie. A face carefully arranged to look injured. Grace did not sit beside him. That was the first thing he noticed. Grace. She looked at the empty chair across from her. Sit down, Nolan. His expression changed. A small betrayal. But not mine. Hers. Detective Ingram started with the crash. The traffic investigator pulled up a map of Westbridge Causeway. Not a dramatic video. Not a news clip. A map. Red line for my car. Blue line for Nolan's SUV. Then came the data. Telemetry from my system. Toll camera timestamps. Bridge traffic footage. Road sensors. Speed estimates. The blue line showed Nolan's SUV moving across 2 lanes before impact. Nolan leaned forward. That's wrong. The investigator clicked to the next slide. A delivery truck camera appeared. Nolan's SUV moved from the outer lane across the wet road. The image froze. My sedan reacted. He clicked again. The impact pushed both vehicles toward the guardrail. Nolan had told reporters, "I lost control." The video showed something different. He had cut across the road. Grace's attorney closed his eyes for a moment. Nolan said he hydroplaned. The investigator continued. She clicked to the next screen. Vehicle speed. Steering angle. Brake timing. She looked around the room. There was no loss of traction before the lane change. A pause. You initiated the movement. Nolan's jaw tightened. I was trying to avoid debris. Another click. The road ahead appeared clear. Detective Ingram wrote something down. Then came the medical claim. Nolan had told everyone he couldn't feel his legs. The hospital records showed something else. No spinal symptoms reported on arrival. No neurological problems. No emergency imaging. Discharged within 2 hours. Nolan shifted in his chair. Shock can present later. Ingram looked at him. Yet you walked out. Nolan looked toward Grace, waiting for her to save him. She didn't. That silence scared him more than the evidence. Then Helen opened the foundation file. Invoices, hotel receipts, restaurant charges, the laptop, mileage records. Nolan tried charm first. Second reach was informal in the beginning. Everyone sacrificed. A lot of things were approved verbally. Helen looked at him over her glasses. By whom? Nolan paused. Grace's head lifted. There it was. The first crack. Nolan started talking faster. She told me to submit the lodge as outreach planning. She said Ethan never checked the small things. Grace stared at him. Paul Sutter moved his hand slightly toward her, warning her not to speak. Nolan noticed, and panicked even more. And the signature, he said, pointing toward the forged approval form that came through Grace's office. I didn't forge anything alone. Alone. That word landed perfectly. Mara immediately wrote it down. Detective Ingram looked up. Mr. Cross, are you saying the signature was forged? Nolan realized what he had just admitted. No, I mean the process was shared. Ingram didn't move his pen. That is not what I asked. Nolan's face turned red. Grace whispered, You forged Ethan's name. Nolan turned toward her. Do not act innocent. His voice sharpened. You needed those programs running. You wanted me visible. You wanted me back in the field. He pointed at her. I trusted you. A pause. You used me. Grace's hand pressed flat against the table. For years, she had protected him from consequences, because consequences would make him look fragile. Now he was using that same protection as evidence against her. I watched her realize it. Not completely. Not yet. But enough. Detective Ingram played the gate recording. Next. Nolan's voice filled the room. Even when she married you, she came to me when things got hard. Grace closed her eyes. Nolan shouted. That was private. Ingram looked at him. It was recorded outside Mr. Vale's property after you approached his gate. Nolan pointed at me. He baited me. I had not said a word. Mara answered. My client was inside his home. Nolan's attorney asked for a break. Detective Ingram refused. Then came the final clip. The rescue audio. Cross first. Move. Nolan calling Grace baby. My hand hitting the glass. This time it wasn't for public opinion. It was for the official record. The room did not gasp. Official rooms rarely do. They document. Ingram closed the file. Mr. Cross, Based on the crash evidence and financial records, we will be referring this matter for further investigation regarding false statements, possible fraud, and forgery. He paused. You are not under arrest at this moment, but you are advised not to leave the jurisdiction. Nolan stood too quickly. This is insane. Helen looked at him. Second Reach will pursue recovery. Mara added, Mr. Vale will pursue civil claims. Nolan looked at Grace. Say something. She didn't. His expression changed. Fine. He pointed at her. Then I will. Paul Sutter leaned toward Grace. Do not engage. Nolan ignored him. She knew I was billing those retreats. His voice became louder. She signed off because she wanted me close. He looked around the room. She let everyone think Ethan was just the husband because she liked being the hero. Grace slowly stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. For a second, I thought she would defend me. She didn't. She defended herself. I never told you to forge his name. Nolan laughed. That's your line. He shook his head. That's what you care about? Detective Ingram stood. Mr. Cross, sit down. Nolan didn't. 2 officers entered. No shouting. No drama. They simply guided him into the hallway for further questioning. His suit jacket pulled at the shoulders. The confident man from the hospital was gone. The neck brace hero was gone. The man smiling through the river rain was gone. What remained was someone realizing the woman he used as a shield could not stop paperwork. Grace stayed standing. Her hands shook at her sides. She looked across the table at me. I didn't know about the forgery. I believed her, but it didn't save her. You knew about the river. Her face broke. Paul Sutter whispered, Grace. She sat down. Helen slid a document across the table. Commander Merrittvale, the Foundation is placing you on immediate administrative removal from all Second Reach functions pending completion of the audit. Grace stared at the paper. I founded it. Helen's expression stayed unchanged. You represented it. Grace looked at me again. This time not as my wife. Not as a commander. As someone reaching for a door that had already been locked. Mara placed another document beside Helen's. The amended divorce petition. Marital misconduct evidence. Asset preservation. Civil recovery claims. Grace, read the first page. Her lips moved, but no words came out. The third party had fallen. Now the final file had her name on it. Grace chose live television for her apology because she still believed cameras could return what cameras had taken. She was wrong. Channel 7 agreed to interview her under one condition. No pre-approved questions. No edited rescue footage. No Nolan sitting off camera like a wounded prince waiting to be protected. She accepted because refusing would look worse. I had no intention of watching. Then Tom Alvarez called. You should know, he said. What? She asked if you would appear. No, I told him. Good. He paused. That is no longer news. He was quiet for a moment. We are airing the full audio tonight. More than what was shown before. Legal cleared it. Yes. I looked at the television. Then air it. At 6, Grace sat under studio lights in a pale blue blouse. No uniform. No badge. No wedding ring. The missing symbols told a story before she even spoke. The anchor, Dana Ruiz, sat across from her. Grace, why are you here tonight? Grace folded her hands in her lap. To apologize. Her voice sounded tired. To the city, to my team, to the rescue community, and to my husband. Dana did not soften. Your husband has filed for divorce. Grace swallowed. Yes. Have you spoken to him? No. Why not? Grace looked down. Because he asked me not to. It was the first answer she gave that respected a boundary. Too late, but honest. Dana continued. When you ordered Nolan Cross first, did you know Ethan Vale's vehicle was taking water faster? Grace's eyes filled. Yes. The studio seemed to shrink around that single word. Dana let the silence stay. Grace wiped under her eye. I thought Nolan was more unstable emotionally. I thought Ethan was conscious, fighting, and still able to hold on. She paused. That was wrong. Her voice cracked. It was not triage. It was personal bias. A month earlier, those words might have mattered. Now they were just a cleaner description of an ugly truth. Dana continued. Did your past romantic relationship with Mr. Cross influence your judgment? Grace closed her eyes. Yes. No speech. No excuse. No explanation. Just yes. The word landed harder than anything else. Then Dana turned toward the monitor. We are going to play extended audio from the incident. Some viewers may find it difficult. I stood in my living room with the remote in my hand. I didn't sit. The screen went dark. Only subtitles. Only timestamps. Rain. Sirens. Water. My fist hitting glass. My voice. Grace. A responder. Sedan is lower. Grace. I see him. Nolan. Baby, please. Then another sound. My voice again. Not a scream. A desperate breath. Grace. The studio camera showed Grace covering her mouth. The audio continued. Responder. Commander. Cross first. Move. Then a quieter voice buried under the storm. Nolan. She'll come. She always comes. Dana paused the audio. Grace was crying now. But this time, nobody rushed to protect her from the camera. Dana asked, Did you hear Ethan call you? Grace tried to answer. Nothing came out. Dana waited. Finally, Grace nodded. Yes. Did you hear Nolan say, she always comes? Grace's hands tightened together. I heard him say something. Dana looked at her. You did not process it then? A pause. Do you process it now? Grace looked directly into the camera. For 1 second, I saw the woman I knew years ago. The woman standing barefoot in our kitchen, laughing with flour on her sleeve, telling me she wanted to build something that saved people. Then the image changed. Back to the woman who let another man turn her compassion into a weapon. Yes, she whispered. I process it now. The interview might have helped her. If Nolan had stayed quiet. He didn't. At 6:23, while Grace was still live, Nolan released a statement through his attorney. Mr. Cross maintains that Commander Merrittvale made all operational decisions during the Westbridge rescue and approved his consulting involvement with Second Reach Foundation. Dana received it on her tablet. Her eyes moved once. Then she read it aloud. Grace's expression changed instantly. There is a certain pain in being betrayed by someone you betrayed someone for. It does not deserve sympathy, but it is still recognizable. Dana leaned forward. Nolan Cross is now saying you approved his foundation role and made all operational decisions. Do you accept sole responsibility? Grace's tears stopped. Not because she became stronger, because shock froze them. I made the rescue decision, she said slowly. A pause. I did not approve fraud. Dana continued. So Mr. Cross is lying? Grace looked off camera. No Nolan. No husband. No family dinner. No department podium. Just studio lights. Yes, she said. He is lying. The clip spread everywhere within minutes. Nolan's attorney tried to walk back the statement. Too late. Grace had publicly called him a liar. He had publicly thrown her under the bus. The bond she had protected through my pain, the river, and the consequences finally broke on live television. My phone buzzed. It was Grace's attorney. Mara answered from her office and silently patched me into the call. Paul Sutter sounded exhausted. Mara. Grace wants to discuss settlement. Mara looked at me through the video. Call? I said nothing. She understood. Divorce settlement? She asked. Yes. Civil liability? A pause. We need to understand your demands. Mara didn't hesitate. Full cooperation with the audit. No claim to the premarital residence. Waiver of spousal support. Repayment schedule for any foundation expenses connected to marital benefit. Public correction of false statements made about Ethan. No direct contact. Sutter exhaled. That is aggressive. Mara looked at me. No. Her voice stayed calm. That is available today. A pause. And tomorrow? Tomorrow we add damages. I liked Mara. She understood timing. After the interview, Grace came back to my house. Not to the gate. to the sidewalk outside. The media had started following her, so she wore a baseball cap low over her face. She stood under the streetlight with her phone in both hands. The intercom buzzed. I didn't answer. She pressed it again. Then she sent an email through counsel. Subject: personal apology. Mara forwarded it with a note. You are not required to read this. I read it anyway, not because I was weak, because I wanted to know if Grace finally understood what actually mattered. The email said, Ethan, I heard you in the audio tonight in a way I refused to hear you that night. I have no defense for choosing Nolan first. I confused his need with my responsibility. I confused your strength with safety. I cannot undo the water. I cannot undo the humiliation. I know you may never forgive me. I am only asking for one conversation, not as commander, not as a victim, not as Nolan's defender, as your wife, Grace. I read it twice. Then I sent one response to Mara. Reject direct contact. Proceed through counsel. Grace stayed by the gate until the rain started again. She looked at the house once. The porch light was off. The courthouse did not care that Grace used to sleep with her hand on my chest. It did not care that I knew how she drank her coffee. It did not care that she cried during old rescue documentaries. It did not care that she once wrote my name inside her helmet before a dangerous flood response because she said I was her reason to come home. The courthouse cared about signatures, dates, evidence, separate property, misused funds, public statements, liability. That was why I trusted it. Feelings failed at the river. Paper did not. Our first divorce hearing took place in a family courtroom with pale walls and a judge who had seen too many people confuse regret with repair. Grace sat across the aisle with Paul Sutter. She wore black, simple, no badge, no donor sweater. Her hair was pinned back. She looked like someone attending the funeral of her own public image. I sat beside Mara. Between us were the documents, the premarital deed, the postnuptial agreement, the foundation audit, the separation notice, the amended petition. The court had already issued temporary restrictions on disputed accounts connected to foundation reimbursements. Grace's personal accounts were untouched, but anything tied to Second Reach was flagged. She could not access donor lists. She could not enter the house. She could not use my company systems. She could not speak publicly for me, my company, or our marriage without legal consequences. That was the first truly irreversible thing. Not divorce. Silence. The kind created by consequences. The judge looked at Grace's attorney. Does your client contest the premarital status of the residence? Paul whispered something to Grace. Her hand tightened around a pen. The pen never moved. Finally, Paul answered. No, Your Honor. One door closed. Does your client contest the validity of the postnuptial agreement? Another whisper. Grace looked toward me. Not Mara. Me. I looked back. Not with anger. Not with forgiveness. Just attention. Paul answered. No, Your Honor. Another door. Spousal support? Paul's jaw tightened. My client waves. Grace closed her eyes. 3 doors. Mara presented our recovery claims without drama. Foundation expenses were separate but overlapping. Some charges were tied directly to Grace's approvals, while others were connected to Nolan's fraud. We were not asking the family court to decide criminal matters, only to protect the claims, preserve the evidence, and stop any movement of disputed assets. The judge granted the preservation order. Grace's shoulders dropped slightly, not enough for anyone else to notice, but I did. Then came the issue of reputational damage caused by false statements. Nolan had called me jealous. Grace had supported the department's wording that minimized what happened. Her attorney argued stress, public pressure, and incomplete information. Mara responded by playing the lobby recording. Grace's own voice filled the courtroom. I knew your car was lower. Everyone listened. Grace stared down at the table. The judge did not lecture her. Somehow that felt worse. He simply wrote his decision. He ordered mediation for the remaining financial matters, maintained the no direct contact rule, preserved my exclusive use of the house, and scheduled the next hearing. Grace did not cry until the judge left. Even then, she did it quietly. Paul packed his documents into his briefcase. Mara rested a hand on my folder. We are done for today. But Grace stood up. Ethan. Paul immediately whispered, Grace. She ignored him. The bailiff looked over. Mara shifted slightly beside me. Grace spoke quickly, like rushing the words could somehow bypass the rules. I know I am not supposed to contact you directly. I know. I just need one sentence from you that is not through a lawyer. I looked at the bailiff, then at Mara. Mara quietly said, You do not have to respond. Grace stepped into the aisle. I lost command today. I already knew. The department had removed her from field leadership pending review. No rescue authority. No incident command. No public training. Her badge still existed, but it no longer opened the doors that mattered. I lost second reach, she continued. Helen removed me completely this morning. Donors are asking for refunds. My father will not answer my calls. Mason told me he cannot defend me anymore. Nolan's attorney is blaming me. She swallowed. I understand consequences now. She took another step. The bailiff warned, Ma'am. Grace stopped. Her eyes stayed on mine. But I need to know if there is any version of the future where you and I sit down without all this. All this. The words almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because she still believed the evidence was something outside our marriage. Like the lawyers, the footage, and the court orders had invaded something that used to be pure. But the marriage was inside the evidence. It was in Cross first. It was in Baby, please. It was in She Always Comes. It was in the moment she decided I was strong enough to survive while Nolan needed her. I stood. Grace lifted her head. Hope is cruel when it arrives too late. I looked at her left hand. The ring was gone. Maybe for legal reasons. Maybe because she finally understood she had no right to wear it anymore. You want a sentence? I asked. She nodded once. The room felt smaller. I kept my voice calm. Here it is. I survived the river. I will not climb back into it. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I turned and walked away with Mara. Outside, reporters were waiting. Mara handled them. Mr. Vale respects the legal process and will not comment beyond the filings. Grace came out a few minutes later. The cameras immediately turned toward her. Someone asked, Grace, do you regret choosing Nolan Cross first? She froze. That question would follow her longer than my name ever did. Paul guided her away. Near the courthouse steps stood Nolan with his own attorney. He had not expected to see her there. She saw him. He saw her. For a moment, the two people who once treated me like an obstacle had to face each other without the protection of romance, rescue stories, or my silence. Nolan spoke first. You need to fix your statement. Grace stared at him. You blamed me on live television. He shook his head. You blamed me first. Then she said the words he did not expect. You forged my husband's name. Nolan's expression changed. Your ex-husband. The word hit her harder than he intended. Not legally final yet, but already true in every way that mattered. Reporters turned their cameras toward them. Paul tried pulling Grace away. Nolan kept going. You think he is going to take you back if you sacrifice me? Wake up, Grace. He is done with you. For once, Nolan told the truth. Grace looked past him toward me. I was already getting into the car. Her hand lifted slightly, like she wanted to reach across the distance between us. Then the door closed. Luke drove away. In the side mirror, I saw Grace standing there between cameras and Nolan, without her badge, without her command, without her husband, and without a script. That was not revenge. That was consequence. Revenge was not making her suffer. Revenge was realizing I no longer felt anything strong enough to turn around. The divorce became final on a Thursday morning. No storm, no dramatic rain, no hospital lights, just a clerk behind a glass window stamping the final papers. Mara handed me the decree inside a folder. Done, she said. That one word carried more peace than any apology Grace had ever given me. I walked out of the courthouse without looking for her. She was there anyway. Across the plaza near the stone steps, wearing the same black coat she had worn during the first hearing. No cameras this time. Public attention moves on once the fall is complete. Maybe that hurt her more than the headlines ever did. At least anger and judgment meant people were still watching. Now strangers just walked past. Grace held an envelope in her hands. Mara noticed her and stepped forward. "I can take that." Grace tightened her grip. "It's not legal." "Then he is not required to receive it." Grace looked at me. "Please." I nodded once toward Mara. Mara took the envelope. Grace's eyes filled with tears, but she did not argue. She had finally learned something, even if it came too late. Some doors do not close because someone locks them. They close because too much has already happened. Nolan's case moved faster than anyone expected because arrogance has a way of leaving evidence behind. He was charged with insurance fraud, making false statements, and forgery-related offenses connected to the foundation approval documents. Second Reach sued him for recovery. Veil Systems filed claims for trademark misuse and reputational damage. His consulting license was suspended. People from his old rescue network stopped returning his calls. The neck brace interview that once made him look like a victim became an internet joke for a few days before disappearing into the endless archive of forgotten scandals. Nolan tried to negotiate by handing investigators every message Grace had ever sent him. Some helped his case. Most damaged both of them. Grace was not charged with forgery. The evidence did not prove she knew about the signature before the audit. But that did not make her innocent. The department review found personal bias during a critical rescue decision, inaccurate or incomplete reporting, and failure to disclose a conflict of interest. Her command status was removed. Her rescue certification was suspended for 2 years pending retraining and psychological review. She resigned before the final disciplinary hearing, calling it a necessary step back. No one called it brave. Second Reach removed her name from leadership materials. Donors demanded stronger oversight. Helen rebuilt the organization without Nolan, without Grace, and without the belief that being a hero meant never being questioned. The house stayed mine. The donor platform stayed mine. The emergency upload system became part of a new safety protocol adopted by 3 nearby counties. This time, the press release did not mention Grace. It mentioned Veil Systems. It mentioned transparent rescue data. It mentioned objective triage reviews. It mentioned me. I did not need applause, but I stopped hiding from recognition. That was the final thing Grace lost that most people never noticed. She lost the version of me who stood quietly at the edge of her pictures. The husband who supported her while she took the spotlight. A week after the divorce, Mara forwarded me the letter Grace had tried to give me outside the courthouse. I read it in my office, not because I missed her, because endings deserve to be finished properly. "Ethan, the decree is final today. I know I do not have the right to ask anything from you. Nolan took my trust and used it, but that is not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I gave him a place to stand. I gave him your place at tables, in my work, and finally at the river. I told myself you were strong enough to wait because you had always waited. I understand now that I confused your patience with something I owned. I lost my command. I lost Second Reach. I lost my father's respect for a while, maybe forever. Mason barely speaks to me. The city knows what I did. Nolan tells anyone who listens that I ruined him. Maybe I did. Maybe we ruined each other. But the worst loss is quieter. It is reaching for my phone and knowing your number is no longer a place I am allowed to go. I am sorry I heard you and still chose him. Grace." I folded the letter and placed it inside the folder with the final decree. Not in the safe. The safe was for things worth protecting. This was only proof. That afternoon, I drove to Westbridge. The guardrail had been replaced. The river moved below, dark and calm, pretending it had never tried to swallow 2 cars and a marriage. I stood at the overlook for a long time. A city crew had installed new emergency markers along the causeway. One of my company's sensor boxes sat beneath a weatherproof cover beside the sign. Small, quiet, useful. A young rescue trainee nearby pointed it out to another. "That system tracks conditions in real time," he said. I listened for a moment. Years ago, I would have stood there and wondered if Grace would ever understand what she lost. Now I only looked at the river, because I finally understood something. The thing I lost was not my marriage. It was the belief that loving someone meant waiting forever for them to choose you, and I had already survived the moment she didn't. That is the Veil unit, he said. It uploads everything before the cabin floods. No more guessing. No more guessing. That was enough. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring until it stopped. A minute later, a voicemail appeared. I did not listen. A moment after that, Mara texted me. Grace tried calling from a new number. I will remind her that counsel-only communication is still active for settlement matters. I replied with one word. Thank you. Then I blocked the number. Some people believe closure comes from one final conversation. Usually, those are the people who benefited from every unfinished conversation that came before. Grace wanted to sit across from me and be seen as something more than the worst thing she had ever done. Maybe she was. Most people are. But I did not owe her the chair across from me, the patience in my voice, the listening face, or the version of myself that softened every hard truth so she could keep protecting Nolan's broken pieces. She chose him when my window was still intact. She chose him when the water was rising. She chose him when I was calling her name. She chose him in the hospital. She chose him at my table. She chose him until the truth became too expensive to ignore. By the time she finally chose regret, I had already chosen myself. Nolan lost his fake hero image, his consulting money, his rescue connections, his legal protection, and the woman whose guilt had shielded him for so long. Grace lost her command, her foundation, her public reputation, her access to my home, her financial comfort, her family's unconditional defense, and her marriage. I lost the belief that love automatically means being chosen first. Then I gained something better, a life where my silence could never again be mistaken for permission. 6 months later, Channel 7 aired a follow-up report about rescue transparency reforms. Tom Alvarez asked if I wanted to appear on camera. I declined. Instead, I sent a written statement. Rescue decisions should be judged by facts, not personal relationships. Evidence saved my life after people failed to. I hope the next person trapped behind glass is reached because of training, not history. They read my words over footage of new rescue units installed on bridges and patrol boats. No mention of my marriage. No mention of Grace crying. No mention of Nolan. Good. Some stories do not deserve to keep owning the ending. That night, I came home, entered through a gate that opened with my own code, and stood in the quiet hallway. The old rescue award photo was still face down in the drawer. I took it out. For a moment, I looked at the version of Grace holding her award, smiling like saving people meant she could never be the person who hurt them. Then I removed the part of the picture where I was barely visible in the background. I placed my half of the image into the shredder. The machine started humming. The blades pulled the old version of me apart into thin strips. Grace could keep the award. Nolan could keep his lies. The river could keep that night. I kept the footage, the decree, the house, the company, the truth, and the life I almost never got to return to. My wife saw my car sinking and chose to break her ex's window first. So I showed the world what she chose. And when she finally cried on live television, I did not turn away. I watched until the truth finished speaking. Then I turned off the screen, and I never looked back.